So there's another use case for S3 access points, and it's called S3 Object Lambda. So the idea is that you have an S3 bucket, but you want to modify the object just before it is being retrieved by a caller application. And instead of, for example, duplicating our buckets to have different versions of each object, we can use S3 Object Lambda instead. And for this, we need the S3 access points that we just saw. So how does that work? Say we have the cloud and we have an S3 bucket in it. So an e-commerce application maybe owns the data in this S3 bucket, and so they're able to access directly the S3 bucket and put and get the original object out of it. But then an analytics application may want to only have access to the redacted object. That means that some data has been deleted from the object. And so instead of creating a new S3 bucket for this, what we can do is that we create an S3 access point on top of our S3 bucket, and it's connected to a Lambda function. Now, we haven't seen Lambda in depth, but a Lambda function allows you to run a bit of code in the cloud very easily. And so this Lambda function is going to redact the object as it is being retrieved. And on top of this Lambda function, we're going to create an S3 Object Lambda access point, and this is how the analytics application is going to access our S3 buckets. So to summarize, the analytics application accesses our S3 Object Lambda access points, which invokes our Lambda function. Our Lambda function is going to retrieve the data from the S3 bucket and run some code to redact the data. And therefore, the analytics application is obtaining a redacted object from the very same S3 bucket as the e-commerce application. Now, a marketing application may want to have access to an enriched object, and they have a customer loyalty database to enhance the data. So instead of, again, creating a new S3 bucket and creating all the objects with all the enriched data, what we can do is, again, using a Lambda function. So another piece of code, and this one will enrich the data by looking it up from the customer loyalty database. And therefore, we can also create an Object Lambda access point on top of it. And therefore, our marketing application can access this access point, this S3 Object Lambda access point, to get, again, the enriched object. So as you can see, we only need one S3 bucket, but we can create access points and object lambdas to modify the data as we will. So, as we wish. So the use cases for it is to redact, for example, PII data, so personally identifiable information for analytics or non-production environments, or for example, to convert data from XML to JSON, or to perform any kind of transformation you want, for example, resizing and watermarking images on the fly, but the watermark is specific to the user who requests the object. So that's kind of a cool usage for S3 Object Lambda. So I hope you liked it, and I will see you in the next lecture.